Eloheinu melech haolam asher ishanu b'mitzvotav u'tzivanu la'asot divrei Torah. So, as I told you I would talk to you about it, and if you downloaded any of the material, because there'll always be, okay, Lori, that's great to know. You don't have a camera, but we're glad you're joining us. If you, I suggest you always try to download the material, but I will put it up on the screen as well. We're looking at the story of Dina. Leslie, this is going to make your hair stand on end. She's our resident feminist. And I am too, but I mean, you know, and this is about Jacob's only daughter, Dina. And we're gonna look at the text first, and then we're gonna look at all the commentaries from different points of view. And it's interesting that of all of the points of view, the Hasidic, the Lubavitcher Rebbe actually has the most accepting, loving interpretation of Dina and what happened to her. But we need to know the story first. So I'm going to put up, and there's a whole chapter in Genesis. It's chapter, I'll see what it is in a second, but there's also a lot. This is the time when, after Jacob had run away, after stealing the birthright, married Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah, who we talked about last time. 20 years passed, and he wanted to go back home to his homeland, Canaan. And so he got everybody together, and, you know, they decided to leave. It was actually a very interesting story. When they were leaving, Rachel stole the household pagan idols to take with her from her father Laban's house. And this is in the text. It's not a midrash. And why, they don't say. And of course, the rabbis, who always like to put a positive spin on it, say because she didn't want her father to worship them anymore. But I would say most likely they were female fertility goddesses, and they, you know, worshiped them. And she had been raised worshiping them before she married Jacob, probably. And so she took these little idols, these, I think, see them as fertility goddesses, with her. And Lavan, when he came after them, said, someone among you stole my idols. And Jacob said, absolutely not. You can search anyone you want. And if you find those idols, you can kill the person. So Lavan starts, you know, searching, and he gets to Rachel, and she sits on them. It's not clear to me if it's on the tent or on her camel, but she says, Father, I can't get up because, and literally it says this, I have my period. Now, you know, you're not even allowed to touch women who are bleeding with menstrual blood. So he just backs off, and she gets to keep them. However, the rabbis say, you know, she had one child, Joseph, and when she gave birth to her next, Benjamin, is when she died. And some say this was the result of this curse that Jacob unwittingly gave. So that's an interpretation. Anyway, he's going back, and he's going to have to confront his brother Esau. Now, Esau, you remember, wanted to kill him because he stole his birthright. It's been all this time, and he's very nervous. He actually divides his family up. We didn't even talk about this, but he puts Bilhah and Zilpah and their children in the front of the line, then Leah and her children in this middle, and Rachel and his, you know, who was his favorite, in the back. So you're even seeing his priorities of who he's protecting. But there's no mention of Dina. So I want to show you this interesting text to start with here. It says, that same night he arose, and this is when they were going back to the land of Canaan, and taking his two wives, his two maidservants, so here they don't even call them his wives, his 11 children, he crossed the ford. He went over to the other side. Okay, so the big question is, what do you mean 11 children? You had 11 sons, but you had 12 children. You had a daughter named Dina. And they ask, what happened to her? And so let me get back to you for a second to tell you. According to the Midrash, he was afraid that Esau would want to marry Dina, even though Esau was, his age, because they're twins and a father with many wives and children, that he was going to marry Dina. So the rabbis say he hid Dina in a trunk so she couldn't be seen, to protect her from Esau. So just keep that in mind, because later the rabbis attribute this to what happened to Dina and her rape. And it's very patriarchal and sexist and upsetting. A lot, which we're going to look at, because I think we need to look at this. Okay, so here's the text first. I have it in Hebrew and also in case I need to reinterpret, but this is the whole story of Dina. It's its own chapter, Genesis 34, if you have a Torah, but you have this text here. So who would like to start reading this story? It's a really racy and dramatic story.
I'll read it.
Doris.
Okay, Doris.
Shall I start where at the very, what happens to Dina?
Dina, right here. Now, Dina.
Let me just see. I've got it all printed out here.
Good. The Torah text.
Yeah, the printout that we did, is that what you're saying?
As the Torah text, there are 2 printouts.
Oh, I have the one from today.
Yeah, there were 2 though.
Oh, I only printed out the one. I can read that. Now, Dina, the daughter, is that what you want me to read? The daughter whom Leah had borne to Jacob went out to visit the daughters of the land. Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, chief of the country, saw her and took her and lay with her by force.
Okay, so first of all, we just want to keep this in mind. They call her the daughter of, it's like who Leah bore to Jacob. So it's like we're mentioning her mother. Dina is the daughter of Leah, who she had given to Jacob, and Shechem, the son of Hamor. Now, Miriam, where are you? What does Hamor mean in Hebrew? Miriam, are you around? Hamor means an ass or a donkey. So I think that's interesting. That's his name.
Why was she alone that she was allowed to be?
That's it. They blame her.
Hamor is a donkey.
Yes. She wanted to visit the other girls. She was the only girl. They moved to this new neighborhood. She went out to visit the daughters of the land. That is a big question. This is a debate. Okay, continue, Doris.
Okay, I'm reading from the Torah now, maybe a little easy. Being strongly drawn to Dina, is that what you want me to start with?
Yes.
Daughter of Jacob and in love with the maiden, he spoke to the maiden tenderly. So Shechem said to his father, Hamor, get me this girl as a wife.
Okay, so he raped her, and then it says he fell in love with her, and whatever that means, and he said, "Oh, I want to marry her." Okay, but she had raped her first. It's not like he did it in the proper order, where he wooed her. He took her and raped her. Go ahead.
Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dina, but since his sons were in the field with his cattle, Jacob kept silent until they came home.
So,
and
Jacob, 1 second. Let's just think about this. Jacob hears that his daughter is raped, but he waits for his sons to come home. Why?
To take care of him, I guess.
Take care of him. What would be another reason?
He might have been outnumbered because he was new.
To be outnumbered. He had 11 sons, and maybe to consult with them to say, what are we going to do? What should we do? This is what happened, which shows that they were men or grown, and that he I don't know if he was too old to make these decisions, or he just needed to hear from his sons, but he didn't act, and he doesn't act. He talks to his sons. Okay, Leslie, you continue. Then Shechem's father
Hamor came out to Jacob to speak to him. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons, having heard the news, came in from the field. The men were distressed and very angry because he had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing not to be done. And Hamor spoke with him, saying, "My son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage." Intermarry with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Now that confuses me. You will dwell among us, and the land will be open before you. Settle, move about, and acquire holdings in it.
He's saying, we'll marry your daughters and you'll marry our daughters, and then we'll be like one family.
We'll be one big happy family.
Well, that's what he's implying, but remember, this started with a rape. And
Right, so he's trying to make nice.
you'll live among us, and the land will be open before you, move about and acquire. Kind of offering him a contract, a deal over this daughter. Okay, continue.
Then Shechem said to her father and brothers, do me this favor, and I will pay whatever you tell me. Ask of me a bride price ever so high, as well as gifts, and I will pay what you tell me. Only give me the maiden for a wife. Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor, speaking with guile, because he had defiled their sister Dina, and said to them,
Stop for a minute. So what do you think about this offer, and do you believe the sincerity of it? And who's missing from the equation?
Dina herself.
Dina,
How did she feel about it?
How did she
Yeah,
feel?
really.
"Hey, you're a rapist." Yeah, she would love that.
So it's like,
She would
Rabbi.
love that.
do we think that Shem really loved her?
maybe.
Kind of seems like from the description that he fell in love with her, but this
But
is, yeah.
Rabbi, does Hamor know about the rape?
Oh, yes, he knows about the rape. Hamor knows about the rape. Like,
Okay.
I think Hamor is not sincere at all. He's trying to keep everything quiet. This new
Yeah.
important family comes to town, and the son's probably, an idiot. And but we haven't heard really, other than the son going to the father saying, I want to get this maiden for me for a wife. We haven't heard any other discussion. There's no discussion about the rape between the two of them.
That's right.
exactly, and I'll pay any price you want. Now, in the ancient world, I think about this this famous painting, The Rape of the Sabines. It happened in Kimberly, you know what I'm talking about? You want to share with that? No? Okay. But it's about these men that when you wanted a wife, you basically kidnapped her and raped her, and that was it. She was your wife. She had no say in it. And I imagine there were instances where the girl and the boy colluded, because they say we're in love, so you kidnap me, and then my parents can't say no because I'm ruined, and they're going to let me marry you. But for the most part, the women were just taken by men. Oh, she's beautiful. I think I want her, and they would kidnap her, rape her, and she had no choice. We know in modern time what happened in Bosnia when they were raping those women, the Serbs. They weren't even allowed to marry. They were considered outcasts and even blamed. In India too, there's these where girls are raped and then they're despoiled. Sometimes they're even killed, and it's not even their fault. So here, and I wonder, like Shem, he saw her, he thought she was beautiful and just took her. He was the prince, you know what I mean? There's this sense of entitlement, this spoiled young man. And now it's like, oh, I want her. We have no idea how Dina felt about it. The brothers, on the other hand, had very strong feelings about it. And let's see what they do, because it's a famous and shocking story. And I'm curious what you're going to think about it. Okay, so they answered. They answered with guile because he had defiled their sister Dina. I'm right here. So who wants to continue reading?
I will.
Okay, Lori.
And said to them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised, for that is a disgrace among us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become like us in that every male among you is circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you and take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell among you and become as one kindred. But if you will not listen to us and become circumcised, we will take our daughters and go.
So they say, okay, if you become like a Jew or a monotheist or believe in the one God with the covenant, if you agree to be circumcised, we'll go through with this. All of you, all the men have to get circumcised, or we're going to just take our sister and go, which means I just realized she was still there. They hadn't brought her home because they said, we'll take our sister, but I guess she's still there in his household. So what happened? Cindy, why don't you read?
I'm trying to read off the screen, but it's blocked by the pictures.
How's that? Does that work?
No, I missed half of the sentence.
Okay. Let's see, because on my screen, how about now?
No, it's the right side. I can't. Why don't you call on someone else that has it printed?
All right. Donna, do you want to read?
Where are we at here?
Their
Their
word,
word-
please.
Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem. And the youth lost no time in doing the thing, for he wanted Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most respected in his father's house.
So he immediately did it. Okay, I'm circumcising myself. Painful.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's doing that, I don't know, there's, Anita Diamond's book, The Red Tent, she, in her novel, it's a novel, she imagines that actually Dina and Shechem were in love. And I mean, Shechem was so eager to circumcise himself so quickly, which is, as an adult, you can imagine how excruciating. Keep going.
So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the lit gate,
Literally to the gate or public place.
literally the gate or public place of their town, and spoke to their fellow townsmen, saying, "These people are our friends. Let them settle in the land and move about in it. For the land is large enough for them. We will take their daughters to ourselves as wives and give our daughters to them. But only on this condition will the men agree with us to dwell among us and be as one kindred, that our males become circumcised as they are circumcised. Their cattle and substance and all their beasts will be ours, if we only agree to their terms, that they will settle among us."
So that's a tricky sentence. Their cattle and substance and all their beasts will be ours. So they're saying, they're a tribe. We're a huge town. Let's intermarry. And basically, we're going to take over. We'll get all their stuff through marriage, through our daughters, through our grandchildren. Ultimately, we're going to absorb them. This is a good deal materially for us. All we have to do. So it's not just a love match. They're seeing it as an economically astute and, sort of shrewd move. Okay. So almost at the end.
Jacob,
Okay. How about somebody else? Susan
Okay.
or Luke, you want to read?
All of his fellow townsmen who went out to the gate of his town heeded Hamor and his son Shechem, and all males, i.e. all his fellow townsmen, all those who went out to the gate of his town were circumcised.
Okay, now here's the coup de grace. Here's the kicker. Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, on the third day, when they were in pain, Simeon and Levi, two of Jacob's sons, brothers of Dinah, took each his sword, came upon the city unmolested, and slew all the males.
oh,
Oh my God.
Keep going.
They put Hamor, where are we? And his son Shechem to the sword, took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The other sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the town because their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and asses and all that was inside the town and outside, all their wealth, all their children and their wives, all that was in the houses they took as captives and booty.
Final sentence.
Okay, Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My men are few in number, so that if they unite against me and attack me, I and my house will be destroyed." But they answered, "Should our sister be treated like a whore?"
Okay. Now, what do we think
Wait a
about
minute. There's too much there.
this? And Yeah, Dina was there the whole time. So she was there at least a week, till they talked to everyone, they circumcised, they were sick 30 days. But what do we think about these brothers and what they did?
A lot of innocent people were killed.
Yeah.
And the women were all taken as wives. They were no better.
The women were taken as captives and slaves and servants. And the children, yes. So what do you think about the brothers?
I think that they were trying to honor their sister, but it's again kind of eerie and creepy and sad. All these people had to die, and all these innocent people died. But I mean, someone messed with my daughter, I don't know what I'd do.
And do you think it was for the defense of Dina?
Yeah. No.
No, Lori.
No, I mean, why did they kill I don't understand the whole point here, because why did they kill all the men after they had gone ahead and gotten circumcised, unless all they wanted was the daughters and to keep all their property?
Okay.
Yeah.
Kimberly.
It also seemed like they just wanted to humiliate all of those men. And it just said that their word didn't mean anything.
Right.
How do you trust them after that, ever? So.
Yes. Well, the Torah says they spoke with guile. It says that word. So
Yeah.
this was a trick. This was never sincere. This was a trick to get them to be, because there were more of them than the sons, weak. I mean, saying on the third day when they were, in terrible pain. Incapacitated is when they came in, and they walked in unmolested because everybody thought, oh, we're in a peace treaty now, and did that. So again, I'm asking, what is do you think Shimon and Levi, what was their motivation, do you think? Susan?
I think this is an incredibly complicated story, and there are good and bad elements in all of these.
Right.
You left one time, and we finished in Women's Torah, and we finished this passage, and people there were irate with the women there, with what the brothers did. But I think it's complicated. I think the first two, Simeon and Levi, were reacting to the rape of their sister, which in women's lib and all that, we should say, you know what, they were heroes with this, that they didn't let it go by. And it often in the Torah, it says that you should not defile women because it would make, it defiles the land. You've got the other brothers then who just came and pillaged, and they were certainly wrong with that. You have Jacob, who remains silent through it and then condemns the brothers, which they will, because people were offended that the brothers got by with that, but Jacob then denounces the brothers later on his deathbed. So
yeah, he denounces them, but what's his, he's such to me, amoral, complex man. When his mother tells him to steal the birthright, he says, well, what if my father finds out? What if he recognizes me? He never says that's wrong. I can't do that. Now, what's his big concern after the brothers do this? What's his big concern?
Jacob's concern, he's concerned with his last speech is that we're only few in number, we're going to be outnumbered, and they're going to come and attack us. So again, it was not
attack me
or to attack me.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, you're giving me a bad reputation. And
right.
I still wonder if you look at what do they call them? Honor killings that have been going on for thousands of years. What is some of the motivation of the brothers? Shall our sister be called a whore? Is it we don't want Dina to be called a whore, or we don't want to have a sister who's called a whore? We want to be disgraced, by what happened. We're dishonored. Right. We need to take revenge for our dishonor.
Right.
Dina's still not consulted in any of this.
And she's totally silent. We never hear from her at all. We don't know how she felt about anything. And we never hear of her again.
Right.
I mean, she's never mentioned again. So she has this traumatic event. It's all about around her, all of this violence, first, on her and then on the whole town of Shlem. And we never hear from her. So what's fascinating now to look at is what my second handout to you is all the different commentaries, what Rashi said, what the Hasidic Rebbe said, all the different ways. And this is what I love about Judaism. And then what we could say, because we look at the text, and I really also feel this a lot, I've said this lately, the text stays the same, but as we change, we grow, our minds, evolve, we read different things, we see different things. So the first one I want to look at is the feminist reading of it that I thought was very interesting. When I say feminist, it's very, concerned with Dina. Hold on. Here we go. And first of all, the thing that I said before. So I'm just going to read this part. After 20 years, Jacob is coming home, anticipating that the reunion with the brother he cheated all those years will be disastrous. He sends messengers laden with presents ahead to his brother. But just to be on the safe side, he divides his camp in order to minimize the losses should he come under attack. The story continues. That same night, he got up, took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children and crossed the river. And then there's the story about him wrestling with God, that famous angel story. But let's go down here to this. 11 children crossing the river, but Jacob already had at this point 12 children. What about Dinah, his daughter? What happened to her? Rashi, quoting a midrash, explains, he placed her in a chest and locked her in. While many commentaries understand that by locking Dinah in a box, Jacob intends to protect her from marrying his brother Esau, we know the truth of the story. Okay, hold on. This is like this woman's interpretation. We know the truth of the story. Hiding Dinah, locking her up, is a powerful image about silencing women, and the silence echoes loudly throughout the rest of the Torah. What happens next? Dinah gets an ultimate act of silencing. The commentaries, now listen to this, understand Dinah's rape as punishment for Jacob's punishment for withholding her from Esau. Dinah's rape is Jacob's punishment? What about Dinah? What has she done? How does she feel? Our text is silent. We only know what her brothers and father think, that she has been defiled, that she must not be treated as a whore. No one in the Torah or in the Midrashic accounts asks her what she wants, what she needs, or how she can be comforted. Her silence is loud enough to reverberate through the generations. We hear it in the reports of other fathers who perceive their daughter's rape as their dishonor, their punishment. Fortunately for Dinah in Genesis, the blame and punishment fall entirely on the perpetrator and his people, not on her. So again, it's like, where's Dinah? She's silenced. She has no say, and everybody acts on her behalf. We don't hear from her mother either, or her aunts either. So
question.
Rabbi, may I? Okay.
Wait, yes, go ahead. First, Donna, I guess I can't see.
Like
Okay.
in this day and age in a society, women are now just barely getting a voice for everything, to have rights and women's rights, and it's just reverberated through history. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
That's right. And this, I mean, certainly in parts of the world, this is still going on. We know that. Lori.
Well, so it says that that Dinah's rape was Jacob's punishment for withholding her from Esau. So it wasn't his punishment for stealing from the birthright. This was so that Esau wouldn't marry his daughter, right?
So first of all, it's interesting because another midrash says that the reason, I don't know, I don't know if in this clue, that Leah, her mother, had weak eyes, not pretty eyes, because she was crying because she was supposed to marry Esau. Leah was supposed to marry Esau and Rachel Jacob, and that's why Leah had they said weak eyes or ugly eyes, because she cried all the time. So now suddenly it's like, well, Dina should marry Esau. And because Jacob withheld Dina from Esau, God punished Jacob by having
Right.
Dina raped. Think
I
about
guess,
that
yeah.
mentality. Think about thinking like that.
Yeah.
Later in another, I love, the rabbis in the Talmud because they always find the good. They try to put everybody in the best light. So why was it a sin to withhold Dina from Esau? Why? Because according to this understanding, Dina was a holy woman. And if she had married Esau, she could have reformed him. She could have had an influence and changed him for the good. And because Jacob withheld Dina's goodness from his evil brother and didn't reform him, Dina got raped.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the way that they want to turn it around, but they say that Dina was, so fantastic that she would have been able to rehabilitate Esau. If you think Esau was evil.
Didn't Esau already have 2 Hittite wives?
He has many wives and children, probably older than Dina. So it's, trying to justify Dina's rape. I don't even know why they have to justify Dina's rape. Why can't it just be a terrible thing that happened to Dina? But no, there's always this kind of, well, this is why. Why did it happen to her? Why would God let something like this happen? There has to be some kind of holy reason or decent reason.
But it's why did God let this happen to Jacob? It's always about the man. It's never about Dina, right? So, but Dina didn't do anything wrong. She's not being punished.
Well, I mean, Leslie mentioned something, and some commentary said, yes, she was a gadabout. She went out by herself.
Oh my.
Girl to do. You don't go out by yourself. You stay at home. And that this story is a warning to women and to fathers about their daughters, not to let your daughter go out on her own, because this is what happens. So did she bring it on herself? It's just like today, you dress a certain way. So when you get raped, it's your fault. It's somehow her fault because she went out, a girl who wanted to meet other girls. There were no other girls her age in the camp, that weren't maybe servants or whatever. She had no sisters. Oh no, you can't do that. And so
how old was she at this time?
And, one commentary says she was probably a teenager, a teenager, 14, 15, 16. That's that's the age of marriage, was even 12, in that time. So she wasn't a girl who, she went out. She wanted to see the other girls. Maybe they even came by and said, oh, come on out. Let's go walking in the town. Let's go window shopping in the market. Let's go shopping in the market. Let's go walking around. And it's like, wow, I've been living alone with just my family and my brothers, who seem to be rather brutal guys. Certainly in the red tent, they're very brutal, but that's just Anita Diamond's idea. So let's look at this other, hold on, thing that's really interesting. Okay, so that is like a woman saying it. Okay, now, there are all of these midrashim that are really fascinating, and you can't believe how the rabbis in the Talmud and later sort of imagine things. So here's one story that makes her mother a holy woman, and that is, who wants to read this? Birth. Who would like to read that? Somebody who hasn't read, or somebody volunteer to read?
I can read.
Okay, her birth.
Where are we? And
Her birth. The rabbis state that Leah was actually pregnant with a son.
I state that Leah was actually pregnant with a son. When Rachel saw that her sister was pregnant, she prayed, resulting in a change of the embryo's gender. Oh my
Okay, so Rachel prayed, oh, not another son for my sister. Please, I can't take it. I don't have any at this point. And so God changed the gender. This is what you think God can do. Keep going. Here's another one.
Another tradition relates that Leah and not Rachel was responsible for this change. Leah knew that Jacob would be the father of 12 tribes. When she realized that she was with child and that Jacob already had 10 sons, she had borne him 6 sons. Bilhah and Zilpah had each given birth to 2 sons. She said, "Shall my sister Rachel not even be as one of the handmaidens?" Leah therefore prayed to God on behalf of her sister, entreating him, "Turn what is in my womb into a female, and do not prevent my sister from bearing a son." God accepted her prayer, and the fetus in her womb was transformed into a girl. Genesis 30:21 therefore states, afterwards, she bore him a daughter. That is after Leah's prayer, since Leah had rendered judgment on herself. The newborn was named Dina.
Right. So you see how the rabbis take every word and they say it has meaning. Why does it say afterwards she bore him a daughter, not just she bore him a daughter? Because it was after she said this prayer to God, and God changed the fetus from a male to a female, which is very interesting that they. Okay. So here, you guys note that Shechem was a city predestined for evil happenings. By the way, Shechem still exists. It's in the West Bank. It's in Israel. I mean, in the West Bank, Palestinian section. Dina was abused there. It was the place of Joseph's sale as a slave, and the kingdom of the Davidic line was divided in the city. That's where there was a civil war. The story of Dina is one of the most difficult biblical narratives, and the rabbis offered different explanations of how Jacob's daughter became involved in this episode. So they just can't reconcile that this girl would be raped for no reason. Why is this story in here? It can't just be that people are evil and men are dogs. But here's number one. Punishment for Jacob. And it's the most smallest infraction. So here are the different ones. I'm going to tell them to you. One of them is that he was arrogant when he put up an altar and he said, you are the God in the heaven and I am the God on earth. He was too arrogant. He took too much authority. So he was punished by the rape of his daughter. It says he promised a vow to God that if, God blessed him, he would, honor him and worship him. And he didn't do it fast enough. He was punished because he lived in a city of sin by experiencing all 3 cardinal sins of idolatry, forbidden sexual relations, and bloodshed. And so again, Jacob is punished with Dina's rape. And here we saw the one again, yet another tradition, here I'm right here, claims that Jacob was penalized for preventing Dina from marrying his brother Esau. He said where's Dina? And he put her in the chest. And here it is. God told him, you withheld Dina from your brother, and due to her good attributes, she could have reformed him. Since you did not want to give her to Esau, who was circumcised, you are punished through her by being taken by one of the uncircumcised. Okay, so that's, again, Dina. Punishment for Leah, because Leah found these mandrakes that are fertility fruits, and she dressed herself as a harlot and tried to seduce Jacob and give him these mandrakes to have more children. And here's that Shechem, he enticed her and seduced her. And I love this though, Dina's responsibility for her conduct and the consequences of her actions. The proponents of this view argue that her father and brothers, get this, would sit in a yeshiva and study, while she preferred to go out and see the daughters of the land. Like there were yeshivas there. There wasn't even a Torah. And Dina desired to be seen, not just to see others. She wanted the land's young men to see her beauty, And Shechem did indeed see her and desire her. And here, I want Leslie to read this. You're gonna love this right here.
The steam's already coming out. The rabbis compare this to a person who goes into the marketplace holding a piece of meat in his hand with a dog following him. Eventually, the dog will succeed in grabbing the meat from his hand. According to this analogy, Shechem's general behavior was completely unbridled, totally lacking any self-control. Dina should have been careful and not shown him her beauty. I always have a problem with this. Always. She's so where it's her problem. You know what? When you think about Mike Pence, for example, how he can't be in a room alone with a woman who's not his wife, that's his problem. Okay. Some rabbis claim that Dina is representative of the weakness from which all women suffer. I would disagree. God took the care to create a woman from a rib, which is a concealed, modest place. Notwithstanding this, women like to go out in public places.
Last paragraph.
The instance of Dina casts light on the danger at hand when any woman goes out to the marketplace. These dicta reveal the anxiety of the rabbis at the thought of their wives and daughters leaving the protected home for the marketplace and the streets of the city. It also implies that the women they were completely second class. They had no say in what they would ever do. It was a man's world. Yes, a man is physically stronger than a woman, most likely. But that doesn't, but the women should be able to do what they want, not just listen to the rabbis.
Well, and it also implies that women have no self-control and also that men have no self-control. So
and it's women's fault that men have no self-control.
That's right. And it reminds me of Saudi Arabia right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Why did it, and Afghanistan, all of them, why the women are veiled? It's to protect the men or the woman. It's not protect the woman.
I have something to add to. I agree with that. And I think there are extremes. And I think current feminism tends to ignore, I guess, since that movie with Jodie Fields. And who was it? She was dressed inappropriately.
Jodie Foster, you mean?
Jodie Foster, I'm sorry. She was and tempting men in the pool hall or so. And it was a Kathleen Turner defended her. I forgot the name of it.
Oh, that was a great movie though. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, she was a hooker and she
was celeb. I remember that. And women could wear whatever they want. Saudi Arabia, of course, is the other extreme and some ultra Orthodox shielding of women. But that doesn't give, that infantilizes women in that it doesn't give them responsibility for what they wear. And I've seen, I mean, it's come to almost nothing now. My granddaughter's graduations, the gals there were wearing, like bikini stuff. And, this is tempting. And why are they, sure, they've got good bodies, they want to show it, but
no is no.
Responsibility in how does it hurt? It hurts because it is.
She said no is no.
What?
I said no is no. I have boys, I don't have daughters, and I have raised them always. I don't care where you are in the process. I don't care what she says, how tempting. If she then utters the word no, you are done.
Rightly, this is 21st century and maybe late 20th century thinking. Women were spoils of war. Women were, and I'm not defending the rabbis because for blaming Dina or punishing Jacob through Dina's rape is outrageous. However, a lot of when they were writing the Talmud and these understandings were during the time of Rome and Roman society and being under the rule of Rome. And it was a very amoral and sexually dangerous time for women. And so I say at that time to say to their daughters, you see, it could happen to you, it happened to Dina, is because maybe it could happen to them in those times. We're talking 2,000 years ago, it's very likely. And that's why I say the interpretations reflect the mentality of the time that they're written. Today,
Yeah.
we have the woman saying, where was Dina's voice? Where's Dina? Locking her up is like silencing her, and we never hear from her. And we totally identify with that. But maybe in Rome, you know, and especially after the destruction of the second temple, when Jews were slaves or captives or whatever, daughters were extremely endangered by any passing Roman soldier or whatever. We know that even in medieval times up to, like, I don't know, the 19th century, well, certainly in medieval times, there was this droit de seigneur, where any woman on a manor, when she was getting married, the Lord had the right to deflower her before her husband, you know, as the right of the master. So it was horrific for women, and perhaps the rabbis were trying to protect their wives and daughters by warning them through this scary story. So we could see them having that attitude then.
I can see some of that attitude. I mean, I totally see what you're saying, but and it was a dangerous time, and men could get away with it. You know, rape doesn't take long. It's 1, 2, 3, and they leave and whatever, and they're not caught. So I understand that perspective of, I don't want you to be alone. I don't want you going out at night, all of that kind of thing. But to twist it and say, for you to show your beauty, and even back then, for women to really have no voice, and I know they didn't. That's history in all cultures, right? It wasn't just this.
Everywhere.
It's still kind of hard that it's to accept that it's such an important story. The Torah, the Bible, these books are revered by so many people, and they're taken as gold. And nobody questions, well, wait a minute, like, this was written by a man, by the way.
Of course.
Right? And why is there no voice at all?
Well, we're the voices today. And I want to show you this because we only have 10 minutes. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, the head of the Hasidic movement, has a beautiful understanding of this. I invite you to read all of the stuff that I sent you because it's all really interesting. But when we get to this one, because there's a lot of things, he says, here, this one, despite the pain Dina endured, the Torah prefaces the story with the message.
I should have that English muffin.
I know, I'm cooking the bagel. I'm not the bagel, the English muffin.
Okay.
Oh,
Just give me,
Jeanette.
the thing that says Clorox on it.
please mute yourself.
Sit.
Hello, whoever talking, please mute.
A Clorox.
Okay.
Susan, you can
There's
mute.
Clorox in it and a cloth.
It's Jeanette's talking.
Who's talking?
Jeanette.
Jeanette,
Stop.
please mute yourself. Despite the pain that Dina endured, the Torah prefaces the story with the message that Dina, like Leah, was outgoing and influential. Now, this is really interesting. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Nachum Mendel Schneerson of righteous memory, sees Dina as the Torah's first prototype of female leadership. Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah were opinionated and decisive. On numerous occasions, they powerfully influenced their husbands and children. They were paradigms of the Akeret Habayit, the woman who builds her and lays the foundation for the next generation. But the Torah gives us no indication that they were influential outside their home. Their lives were in sync with King David's description of the Jewish woman, the daughter of the king. The entire glory of the daughter of the king is her inwardness. She is glorified because of her inwardness. Her first priority is her inner circle. This regal woman is dedicated to cultivating her marriage and investing in her children's well-being. Like a true princess, her regality stems from her focus on what is important, not what is popular. She doesn't need to extend beyond her home life and promote herself publicly in order to validate her worth. So that was King David, and I'm sure a lot of very religious and Orthodox women through the generations believe this. And, I'm a princess, I stay at home, I'm inward. You buy that. So what would King David say about today's out there women, many of whom making a significant mark on society? Have they lost their opportunity for regal living? Dina was unique. She was gifted with a potent sphere of influence. Her charisma naturally attracted other people to take her lead. Dina was drawn towards other women, and even in a new environment, she was naturally social. ultimately, she always influenced other people to become more spiritually sensitive. So this is the head of the Hasidic movement of Chabad. This is his understanding of Dina, which we don't read anywhere else, none of the Talmud, not Rashi, anywhere, that she was gifted, she was spiritual, and that her outgoing behavior was a gift.
I like it.
I know. I mean, I was amazed when I found this. Dina is every woman who is naturally influential. For her, it would be a loss to hide in a box. She's got her work cut out for her. With conscious effort, she could become an inspirational leader. So this is, and then of course, because he's Orthodox, and Susan Ehrlich will love this, read this. What about modesty?
Modesty's good.
Okay, Susan, unmute yourself.
Yes, so what about modesty? And that was some of my point. I mean, there are extremes, but there are also extremes. What about inwardness that generates feminine glory? Yes, she has a higher calling for greater exposure, but at what personal cost? Does she have to relinquish the glory that comes from living a more private life? The Rebbe advises female leaders to utilize their influence and still retain their modesty. That's a difficult balance to maintain. Personal attention can become addictive. A more provocative way of dress and flirtatious conversation can open doors for influential women. Modesty can feel like an unfair inhibition for female leaders. But perhaps along with the loss of modesty comes the loss of focused influence. Does my exposure make people think more about God or more about me?
So the thing that he's saying is, if you're not modest, if you're dressing provocatively, are they going to be looking more at you as a sexual being and not hearing your holy, spiritual, leader-like message? So
Right.
He's advising you to be modest in your dress and demeanor so that people can hear your message. That's how he balances the two. Continue.
A woman is most effective at making an inspirational mark on the world when she carries the allure of dignity. It's an allure that modest dress and behavior naturally breeds. For her, King David's inwardness doesn't mean staying inside the house as much as it means staying true to yourself. Modest leadership, in essence, is saying, I have an authentic message to share, but I'm not prepared to compromise any boundaries to hook you in. Instead, the female leader sets a tone of warmth and sincerity that speak for itself. The Rebbe argues that the feminine model of leadership is even more effective than the typical masculine model of leadership, which tends to be more domineering and authoritarian. The feminine influence is predicated upon sincerity, selflessness, and nurturing.
Wow.
It's great.
Okay. How do I stop? Where am I? Okay, stop. Wait, hold on. Okay, here we go. Yes, Miriam.
I'm shocked like you are. First of all, I don't believe this is Rabbi Schneyer's center.
It is.
You
It
say
is.
the entire head of the Chabad movement, whose synagogue was in Brooklyn, not too far from where I lived. I had the privilege of seeing Rabbi Schneyerson at one time. I have a friend who literally flew from Israel to ask the rabbi whether her daughter, who was once divorced, should marry this particular man that she met in Bnei Brak. She literally flew from Israel, got an appointment at 2:30 a.m., waited online. There were people ahead of her, people behind her at 2:30 a.m. to hear what this great guru had to say. Now, nobody is quieter in the Bible, quieter than Dina. The other women speak up. They say something. Sarah talks. She laughs. When she hears she's going to be pregnant, she doesn't believe it. Rachel is unhappy and speaks out. Rachel, surely she speaks out. Leah speaks out. Rivka devises a whole scheme so that her younger son gets the birthright. And here this woman says not one word. And the Rabbi Schneerson, Allah Shalom, gives us
this tremendous treatise or thought or psychological resume or anything. I am literally shocked. It's a shocking thing for me today to learn. Thank you, Rabbi.
Well, I said again, it's like of the times when he was, in the mid 20th century, women were finding their voice, and he was not about to say, no, stay in your house and not leave. So he looked at a way to take the story of Dina and make it relevant to that time, to our time, that you remain modest and, but you can influence, you have an influence. It's a very forward thinking in the Orthodox world, for sure. And that's what I love about the Torah, that we can find what we need at every era, at every time.
Okay, please excuse me, Susan. Please point out to me, since I must have missed it in the portion. I read it in Hebrew and English. Please point out to me where it says anything about Dina's modesty.
About Dina's what?
Not a word.
Dina's
Modesty.
About her modesty.
No,
It never
nothing.
alludes to it. Where did he get the idea from?
But I should say,
Midrash, that's what interpretation is. Who had raised their hand? Susan.
I did, because I'm not surprised at all. And I would suggest reading Joseph Telushkin's biography. It's called The Rebbe. And he goes through, the Rebbe was so forward-looking. And he was very supportive of women. And he started girls' schools, yeshiva for women. And current Chabad women celebrate his wife and her founding of these schools. So, I mean, it's a beautiful biography, and he was well educated, as you know.
He studied in the Sorbonne. He was very educated.
Very educated in Europe, in Berlin and the like. He has degrees there from the universities, and he was very forward-looking. And I think we condemn, I don't, but we condemn excesses, but certainly not the Rebbe.
No, I have to end because it's 1 o'clock. I've told you I have to go to Pasadena, but the other things that I gave you about Dina, but I think it's fascinating, and that we bring our own interpretation to the Torah. The Torah is so rich. It's such a pleasure. And happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Thanksgiving. I
Happy
think
Thanksgiving
modesty,
to all.
thank you, everybody. I think modesty brings us closer to God.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.
See you
Bye-bye.
in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy Hanukkah. Miriam,
Yes.